Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone to episode 87 of Album Rant. And first and foremost, I want to apologize for not being here last week. I was out of town, I was seeing people, and I just did not have a chance to record an episode. But I am going to rectify that tonight. I'm going to come back and I am going to bring you the 87th episode of Album Rant. And as you see right there from the front of your screen, I am for the third time on this channel going to dive into Welsh Prog-Rock, hard rock, heavy metal artist Budgie. Yes, trio of members led by Burke, Shelley on bass guitar and lead vocals. Tony Bourge, at least, he was the main guitarist for the band, at least during their most well-known period throughout the early to late 70s. And then they had a revolving door of drummers, but I will get to that in a second. Now, I have decided tonight to focus my efforts on their fifth studio release, released in 1975, entitled Bandolier. But since it's been such a long time since I've talked about Budgie, I'm going to kind of catch everybody up once again as I usually do. And they were, like I said, a Welsh prog-rock heavy metal artist, and this may be the only artist that I am, even vaguely familiar with that came from the country of Wales, so that makes them very significant. But they were formed in 1976 in Cardiff, Wales. I think I said that correctly. And again, they were started by two people by the name of Burke, Shelley, and Tony Bourge. And they really started out as more of a blues rock band, which was pretty understandable because that was a very popular genre of music around 1967. And then as time went on, they progressively, quote unquote, moved closer and closer to prog rock and heavy metal. And they eventually became a powerhouse of a trio who became very influential to other current heavy metal artists, such as Metallica, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and many others. So their initial name, they initially called themselves Contemporary Grass. I'm not sure if that's an allusion to what, but you be the judge on that. And the initial lineup was, again, Burke Shelley, Tony Bourge, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I did my best. And a drummer by the name of Ray Phillips. And after performing several gigs throughout the United Kingdom, they eventually settled on the name of Budgie. And according to Shelley, this is what they were going for. They wanted to play noisy, heavy rock, but wanted a name that was diametrically opposed to that. So, sometimes opposites go very well together. Sometimes they don't. But in this case, I think they work together very well. And they released their first album in the year 1971. And man, what a debut. I know these guys predate Rush, but they really remind me of Rush a lot. Not just in the sense that they're made of three members, and the bassist is also the lead vocalist, but also because the lead vocalist of both artists, of both acts, sound very similar. They have some very heavy guitar work throughout their music, and also the bass really accompanies things very well. And so that's why I liken them to Rush quite often, even though, yes, they did come out before Rush. But anyways, this was a very, like I said, very great album, and it's a shame it is not more widely recognized. But to me, it really sounded like a blend of heavy metal and prog rock, which is an awesome combination. Kind of a combination of Black Sabbath and Rush. And again, take those two things, mix them together. They may work, it may not. In this case, it did. And some of the highlights from that first album were the song Guts, Nude Disintegrating Parachutist Woman. Yes, sometimes they did have these very, very long song titles, which is a creative approach, I'll say. Blue Oyster Cult does the same thing. We had Rape of the Locks and Homicidal, Suicidal. And man, that was just a great debut, but it did not stop there. Because in 1972, under the same lineup, they released their second album entitled Squawk. Get it? Birds, squawk. Okay, and again, they really continued that blend of heavy metal and prog rock, and they delivered another very, very strong album because we had Whiskey River, Hot as a Docker's Armpit, Young as a World, and Stranded, which was a very funky closer to the album, and I also really love that. But then, the following year, in 1973, this is an album that I have reviewed before on Album Rant. It was a long time ago, but I did it. They released what I think was their best album to date, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, because we had Bread Fan, which is a song that was later covered by Metallica, and so you can kind of see where that influence came from. We had a cover of Baby Please Don't Go by, forget who it's by. Yeah. Obviously, I am not really too much into the original artists, but I listened to several artists such as AC/DC, Ted Nugent, and Budgie, all of whom have done a cover of Baby Please Don't Go, so apparently it's a great song, it seems. We had You're the Biggest Thing Since Powdered Milk, which was a very long progressive number, and I loved every second of it. But of course, at the very end, it closes with the very mighty Parents, 10-minute prog rock number that never really lets up. It definitely incorporates a lot of blues elements into it, and I thought it worked very well. However, unfortunately, after Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, Ray Phillips left the band, so the band was now without a drummer. But no big deal, because they found another drummer by the name of Pete Booth. And in 1974, they released In For the Kill, which I have also reviewed before on Album Rant. And the title track came out swinging, one of their greatest songs ever. We had a song that was originally released as a single back before even the first album, I believe, and it was later put on Into the Kill, called Crash Course in Brain Surgery. Yes, that is the name of the song. And it really sounded more like a punk rock song, if you can believe it or not, but you know, fair's fair. And we also had Zoom Club, which, much like You're the Biggest Thing Since Powdered Milk, was the big, long, epic prog number, and it was just as good. And we had Living on Your Own, and so In For the Kill was another very solid album from Budgie. However, after that album, Pete Booth was out, and he was replaced by drummer Steve Williams, who would go on to perform drums on every single Budgie album until the very last one in 2006, You're All Living in Cuckoo Land. So from this album on, the only spot that really changed, that really went to other people was the guitarist. So there's that. So anyways, we now come to, like I said, 1975, and the subject of tonight's review, Bandolier. And man, that album cover is just insane. But I still love it all the same. Over here on the back, there is no gatefold here, but we do have some pictures of the band. So we have Tony Bourge, am I saying that right? Whatever. He's the guitarist. We had Steve Williams, who would become the longtime drummer from here on out. And of course, we have Burke Shelley, who definitely is kind of adopting the hippie look, and his glasses kind of make him look like a nerd, but all the same, he was amazing. He's the bass player and the vocalist, and he was the only consistent member throughout the band's entire tenure. So I think we do have a track list. Yes, we have that right here. And I'm going to go through this song by song and kind of talk about them. So let's start with Breaking All the House Rules. And it starts out with a very fast and grooving rhythm, you know, dum 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 dum, and I really like it. It's like, I've been running from a dark horse, I can't lose it. I've been calling to an old cross, don't excuse it. Well, I paid them back and I'm all right. Got a mean kind of woman, she out of sight. Well, I don't mind not sitting in the old booth at the back. Don't break the house rules. And then of course after that it goes dum 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 dum. There's no real chorus in this song, which is interesting because this is one of the standout tracks from this album. That's fine. I mean, like I said, these guys really dove heavily into prog rock, much like Yes and Rush, and so a lot of their arrangements are not very traditional in the sense of the word traditional. But anyways, just after that main riff, they go through it a couple more times, and they do 2 more verses along that same rhythm. Now, I may be the only person who says this. I have never heard anyone else say this, but I was listening to this song quite a lot over the past couple of weeks, just keep it fresh in my head for this review. And every time I had it in my head and those little segments, those kind of versy segments ended, it always made my mind jump to another song. It made me think of Killers by Iron Maiden. I really do see or hear some similarities between these 2 songs. Was that, well, let me back up. I mean, these guys did come out before Iron Maiden by at least a decade. So if anyone was influenced by anyone, it was Iron Maiden influenced by Budgie, which also makes sense, which I'll get to in a little bit. But it's quite possible that when they wrote Killers, they were taking influence from Breaking All the House Rules. I don't know, you be the judge on that one, but that's what I see. At least that's the conclusion I came to. If you disagree, then tell me why I'm wrong, that's fine. But anyways, after those 2 little verse segments, we then go into a slower section. And there's not too much to the lyrics. It's just, I don't need one to tell me. I don't need no one to tell me what to do, girl. But then we go into a more heavy section, but it's also slower. And it's got kind of some funk influences, it seems. And that's fine. I mean, they definitely would dive more into funk on later albums. But anyways, last couple of minutes or so, we do go back to that main riff, the dum 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 dum, and it closes out very, very nicely. So yeah, no real traditional chorus on this one. We have the main riff, and we have kind of a boogie section in the middle, and then we go back to the start, and it works pretty well. I do really like that one. But then we come to the second number, which is Slip Away. And Budgie did this all the time. Like, they would have these big epic prog numbers, these big, heavy, very ambitious songs or suites or whatever, and then kind of in the middle, they would have these rather short, haunting, soft, acoustic numbers. I wouldn't quite call them ballads, but they were definitely very, very soft. And well, Slip Away is the representative one from Bandolier. Again, very dark, very haunting, and this was very reminiscent of those early Budgie albums. Acoustically driven, the vocals are very soft, and in a sense, it almost sounds folksy, almost sounds like folk music. I'm not sure if you really make that big of a leap, but it's definitely teetering on the edge of that. Around the halfway point or so, the drums do come in, and there's a rather decent guitar solo. Nothing really to write home about, but it was decent. And the song never really fully goes balls to the wall as they often do, but it does kind of pick up in the middle a little bit, but it's still a very soft song. And I really do like it that the band kind of dives in or delves into various genres. Not all artists do this, AC/DC, Kiss, but it's good that they try something different. Yeah, do some things work better than other things? Yeah, obviously, but it is good that they are trying to expand their horizon, at least trying something. But Slip Away doesn't quite do it for me the way that Breaking All the House Rules did. Same thing with Who Do You Want For Your Love, which is the third song from this album. And this is a more funky number. At least the intro is very, very funky. And this would kind of be a prelude for a musical direction that they would endeavor on or dive into on their next 2 albums. If I were Britannia, I'd Break All the Rules and Impeccable, which maybe I'll talk about one day. But again, you can kind of tell they are starting to move into a different musical style, which is totally fine. But yeah, that very first segment, about the first minute and a half or so, very slow and very funky, and you can definitely tell this came out in the 80s, and that's good for all it is. But then about close to the 2-minute mark or so, the song really starts to pick up, and the guitar comes in, and it's much heavier and electric. It's kind of got this wah-wah thing on, it's like, probably did that wrong, it's alright, I tried my best there. But anyways, my point is, you get a very heavy, but still kind of funky guitar rhythm, and I think it's really, really great. And then towards after that, it really does start to get more heavier and definitely more proggy. The bass really comes in, accompanies the guitar very, very well, and I think that's also really awesome. Now, we move into a more faster segment, kind of towards the middle or so, and I just gotta say this, that main underlying rhythm does also remind me a lot of Stealer by Judas Priest. Now again, this album came out before British Steel, so if anyone was influenced by anyone, it was Judas Priest being influenced by Budgie. I don't know if that's actually the case, I just hear some similarities in the rhythm. If you feel there are no similarities, totally understandable. It's just something my mind kept connecting the dots to as I listened to this. So there we go. But yeah, there is a really good interlude in the middle, and it jams out until the end, still maintaining that Steeler rhythm. So yeah, this one was pretty long. It was over 6 minutes, kind of teetering on the 7-minute mark. And it's also a very proggy number, and also a very, heavy number once you get past that intro. And again, diving very much into funk music. Now, my favorite from side number 1, tonight I am going to have to say Breaking All the House Rules. I just think it's faster, I think it's heavier, and I think overall it is a better song than Slip Away and Who Do You Want For Your Love. Now, I think side 1 is solid all around. I like everything from this album. So please don't make the false connection that I'm ripping on some of the weaker numbers on here. I'm not. They're all good, just some are better than others. But we still have one more side to conquer, so let's go to side number 2. And it starts off with I Can't See My Feelings. And man, the rhythm on this is just so creative. I'm gonna try to hum it to the best of my ability. It's like dun 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 dun. I think I did that all right. We'll see how it comes out. But anyways, this is a very instrumental song. There are not a lot of lyrics in this. It is very much driven by the instruments, which is totally great. I mean, there are lyrics, but not really much. I mean, the first verse is just this. I can't see my feelings. Open my eyes. I can't see my feelings up in the pale moonlight. I'm not exactly sure what that is supposed to mean, but it's awesome nevertheless. So yeah, we have that main riff and 2 kind of verses. No real chorus here, and that goes on twice. Until we get to an instrumental break, and Burke Shelley kind of takes over the song at this point. First of all, there's a really dynamic bass solo, again, very funky and very 70s-like, which makes sense because it's released in the 70s. But then it starts to jam and the guitar comes in, and it still maintains that very funky rhythm, that very staccato-like rhythm, which I just really, really love. I mean, if you just think about this song title, you might think it's going to be a more upbeat and poppy number, but it really isn't. It's a very dark and very creative number, I'll say that. And I just love the rhythm. I just can't get enough of that, okay? But then, of course, we go back into the main rhythm, and it closes out very, very well, okay? Now, after that third rhythm, after that third verse arrangement, I guess, we have a coda. It ditches the funk influences, and it goes for a more traditional sound, a more traditional hard rock approach, I guess you could say. Maybe even heavy metal. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made there, okay? But yes, we have a very good guitar solo throughout that ending, and Burke Shelley is providing some background vocals to accompany the guitar, which usually it's the other way around, but very nice approach, I'll say that. And yes, towards the last 50 seconds or so, it does start to get fast, and it closes out very well. So yeah, I Can't See My Feelings, great number. So the fifth song, second from side 2, is I Ain't No Mountain. Now, my initial conclusion from this, after looking at the credits, was that this was a cover. Well, I have tried to look up who the original artist is. I couldn't find anything. I mean, I type in I ain't no mountain, and after we get through all the results that, are for there ain't no mountain high enough, which is not related to this, it's just Budgie. So I'm guessing they may have been the original artists. If I'm wrong, again, correct me with your research, that'll be fine. But the reason I thought it was a cover was it's not credited to anyone in the band. It's credited to Andy Fairweather Lowe. Never really heard much about him, don't know much about him, but he did write this, so we're just going to have to go with that, okay? But this is a much faster song, much lighter in tone, and it kind of sounds like something that would come on the radio. These guys never really had a big radio hit, which is a shame, let me be clear about that. But this sounds like something that would be suitable for the radio. It's not dark or overly progressive or complex. It's a very straightforward song, a very straightforward number, and I think it's very good for what it is. It's, like I said, fast but light in tone, but man, the guitar is very electric, very, very heavy, and I still love that for what it is. Now, it does have a very traditional format. This is more of a verse-chorus song, which is perfectly fine. I mean, you got to change it up a little bit. But yes, the chorus is like, I ain't no mountain for you to climb on, ain't nobody that you could be. So don't make my bed for me to lie in while I'm paying like the rest. So I think I did that okay. I think I kind of messed up towards the end, but it's all right. But yeah, it's, like I said, sounds like something Rush would have written. Now, in the middle, in the interlude, they kind of go back to that chorus a bit, but it's much softer. The band kind of takes a break a bit. I think it's just Burke, Shelley singing kind of softly, and maybe some rather soft guitar in the background, but then, of course, it comes right back in, and we get that very upbeat chorus till the end of the song, so yeah, pretty solid. However, the big centerpiece from this album is most certainly the album closer, Napoleon Bonaparte 1 and 2. I see what they did there. That was clever. I'll give them that. This is a two-part number, and so of course it's incredibly proggy. Napoleon Bonaparte 1 is very soft and very melodic. It kind of gives the listener a false sense of security in the sense that you think it's going to be a very, very slow and gloomy kind of number, and so it's really kind of setting the stage. But towards the end of Napoleon Bonaparte 1, you can definitely hear it picking up. You can definitely hear it starting to gain steam, and then all of a sudden it segues right into Napoleon Bonaparte 2, and it is just freaking explosive. It's like down, 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 and it really just sounds like they're galloping off into battle, and man, it's just so awesome. Again, I can definitely feel how Iron Maiden may have been influenced by this because they've written a lot of songs that kind of have that same feel, that same mood to it, where you just have this entire army about to go marching off and galloping off into battle. Definitely very prevalent on Run to the Hills and Senjutsu from their most recent album. But yes, I mean, it just never really lets up. It maintains that very heavy rhythm, and it just blew me away the first time I heard it. I first heard this song on a greatest hits package that I bought a few years ago, and this was one of the songs that I just could not stop listening to. It was that awesome. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on until it finally takes a break when Burke is just going, hold me, hold me. And then it just stops for a bit, but then it picks right back up with the dong, 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 and it's one of my very favorite Budgie songs, and it is definitely my favorite from side number 2. Now, something I forgot to mention about I Can't See My Feelings, I mentioned that I suspected in many places that Iron Maiden was influenced by Budgie. Well, they actually did a cover of I Can't See My Feelings, and it was released as a B-side for the From Here to Eternity single. So yes, Iron Maiden has actually covered a Budgie song before. Now, the Budgie version is way better than the Iron Maiden version. of course it is, but still, that's pretty clear evidence that Maiden was influenced heavily by Budgie. We know that Metallica was, and quite possibly Judas Priest as well. So yes, my favorite from side 2 and the entire album is Napoleon Bonaparte 1 and 2. And I think that is going to conclude my review of Bandolier by Budgie. Do I recommend this album? Absolutely I do. This is a very underrated album by a very underrated band. If you're a casual listener, you may have never even heard of this. I highly suggest picking it up because for the longest time, I knew who Budgie was. And I was about at one point in my life to buy a greatest hits package and get into them. And for some reason, I didn't. And I never really fully picked it up until about 15 years later. And during those 15 years, I could have been listening to some really great music. I mean, better late than never, make no mistake about that. But still, if you know of something that you think might be great, give it a shot because there's a very good chance it could work out for you. So anyways, yes, definitely pick up Bandolier by Budgie. Now, thank you all very much for joining me tonight. Next time, we're going to find out if it's better to ride the storm out or to just keep pushing on. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.